Welcome to your fourth video. In this one, we're going to explore qualitative data. Now, qualitative data, as we spoke about previously, is words, it's responses in sentences, it's conversations, it's in greater depth, it gives us more of the why. Now, here are some of the ways that we might collect data, we might collect information in a qualitative way during market research. I just want to focus in on a couple of these. So the top one, we've explored questionnaires already, so we won't talk about that anymore, but simply by making the questions open-ended rather than closed questions, we can turn a questionnaire from quantitative to qualitative quite quickly, quite simply. But I wanted to explore the bottom two. So we might interview people. In market research, it's quite likely we might interview a focus group, a group of people from a particular population, and that's why it would be a focus group rather than just a group. So we might find we want people who are between 20 to 25 who live in Plymouth, who are on or have studied a university degree. We might get 6 or 8 of those people in a room with very similar demographics, very similar education, very similar experiences, and we might talk to all of those people at the same time. Or we might do it one-on-one. So for example, an interview. We might just interview people. Now, of course, as we said before, that's very time consuming. So we're going to talk to a lot less people, a lot fewer people than we would in quantitative research. But it does give us greater information. It does give us the why. So interviews essentially are there to give us or to allow us to gain an understanding of the underlying reasons and motivations for people's attitudes, preferences, and behaviours. So we're not necessarily so interested in, would you buy this product? Would you turn up to this event? We're interested in knowing the reasons for that, their motivations for saying yes or no, their attitudes towards it, their preferences, and their behaviour once they get there, or their behaviour that might lead them to wanting to buy that. They can be carried out in person. They can be carried out by the telephone. I think more often they're in person, but they can be by telephone. The problem with doing it by telephone is interviews can be quite lengthy, and it's quite hard to keep someone engaged on the phone for that long. So that's why they're typically in person. But as we said earlier, they could also be completed in groups, e.g. a group interview or a focus group interview. Now, they can be carried out in any location. It's quite typical that if we're going to carry out an interview, we will allow the interviewee to select the location because we want them to feel comfortable. If you think about a job interview, you normally go into the location that's set by the employer, and that's quite nerve-wracking. You're walking into their environment. In a research interview, we might flip that and we might go into their environment to try and help them be more comfortable, because if they're more comfortable, they're more likely to give us a true and honest response, because that anxiety or that nervousness will be reduced, or will likely be reduced. So there's 3 types of interviews. We could structure it, which essentially is like a questionnaire. We're going to ask them a set number of questions. We're not going to deviate away from that, but they can give a greater depth of response because they're talking rather than writing, where people tend to write less than they would say. We could do it at the other end, unstructured. So we can just walk in, we've got some topics in our mind, but we're just going to talk. And we'll talk around those topics, but we haven't planned any questions. We're just going to talk freely. Or we've got something in the middle, and that something in the middle is called semi-structured. So we will have some set questions. We will also potentially talk freely around those questions, but we will then come back to the questions when we need to, so we get through those. Now, in terms of analysing that data and understanding that data, structured information is brilliant because we've asked the same questions to a number of people. It's really easy to compare responses. Unstructured can be potentially a bit of a nightmare because we've asked completely different questions to everyone or most people, but the information we gather might be richer, might be better. Semi-structured in the middle could give us a bit of both. Now, the potential is you can get a bit of both badly, but if you do it well, you can get a bit of both really well. So you've got some set questions that you can compare, but you've also got some really in-depth information, some really rich information off the back of that when we deviate away from our set questions. So why would an organisation carry out a qualitative interview? Well, it gives us rich data, gives us the why. It lets companies or organisations understand why people want or don't want to buy their product or turn up to their events. It helps us understand people's attitudes and behaviours. If, for example, if people go into a shop and see certain things, are they likely then to buy your product as well? Or actually, does the competition potentially stop them from buying our product? Or when they turn up to watch a sports event, are they likely to go and buy some food at half time? Or actually, do they want to stay in their seats? Do they like programs? Would they rather a program be internet based? It allows us to get the why out of people.